Capitalism, socialism, Stalin, the policy of containment during the Cold War, and the modern crisis in liberalism. All in 2.5 minutes. Let's talk about X for the X article. Let's go back to February the 22nd, 1946. George F. Kennan, an American, is sat in a cold room in Moscow. He sends a highly confidential long telegram back to Washington. There are 3 important dimensions. The first is his perception of the threat posed by the USSR. Kennan reflects on a speech given by Stalin in 1927 in which he divided the world up into 2 centres, the capitalist centre and the socialist centre. He argued at the time that the battle between these 2 centres would determine the future of the world. Kennan is warning the United States in 1946 that the battle still rages on in the minds of the political elites in the Soviet Union. This brings us on to the second dimension. How will the USSR fight this battle? Domestically, Kennan argues that they will frame the external world as an evil enemy, so as to justify an increase in military expenditure at home. At the international level, Kennan warns that the USSR will secretly and privately seek to destroy the Western way of life from within by infiltrating organisations and the media, etc. This brings us on to the third and final dimension. What should the United States do about all this? Kennan argues that the Soviet worldview is all wrong, that capitalist states and socialist states can live side by side, and if the United States handles this properly, they can avoid a big war. This is where the idea of containment comes to the fore. As he was saying, to do this, they have to play the long game. They have to be patient but vigilant to counter any expansionist moves made by the USSR. But from the perspective of 2025, he also argues 2 interesting things. The first being that a lot hinges on just how capitalist states look after their own. They need to get their own house in order and make sure that people are basically rewarded within these societies, because then they won't look for alternatives elsewhere. And this is what leading liberal capitalists such as Francis Fukuyama has warned about in his interview with the New Statesman back in around 2018, and he's basically arguing that capitalism has not addressed extreme wealth inequality, and this is a huge problem. He argues that after the global financial crisis of 2008, there should have been a rise in left-wing populism and capitalist society looking after basic needs, but what we got instead is a rise of right-wing populism and identity politics. The second thing is that Kennan argues we need a coherent West. That if the Soviet Union is facing any individual country, it looks very strong, but if it faces a united capitalist Western front, it looks much weaker. Maybe someone should remind Trump of this as he divides the West.